We're back, people. What's up? Going over the safety room today. Now, once people get in here, we'll really dig into it. Haven't streamed in a few, I don't know how many days. Not that long, but we did the, we're doing the same thing, continuing to go over, like each position group. Started with tight end. Definitely an intriguing one. Decided to go with safety because the Dolphins recently signed Marcus May. We can also talk a little bit about Calais Campbell. I obviously made a video on Campbell, on Marcus May, the Dolphins' most recent additions, with the post-June 1st cap money, which doesn't surprise me. I expected maybe more interior O-line before them going after a D-line, but them going after a safety definitely was one of my top priorities. So definitely excited about that move. And, we'll go over the entire group. I'm expecting, safeties, you can keep either 4 or 5 on the roster. It kind of depends because when it comes down to the safety group, it kind of depends on your corners as well. And maybe if you consider someone that can play both positions, you sometimes keep one less safety that can be a corner. It depends where you consider Needham as well too. But definitely an intriguing group. Some young guys that are kind of on the edge who probably in a tough spot here. We obviously will go over it. Here's your top 3, obviously being Holland, Poyer, and Marcus May, who will definitely see the most playing time. Those 3. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if at some point in the season Marcus May sees more playing time than Poyer. They actually had similar level of film. I just think Poyer is definitely like the leader type, but lost some steps. And then after those 3, you have Elijah Campbell, Nick Needham, who's kind of a part of both the corner and safety room. And then you have your rookies with Mark Perry, Patrick Morris, Jordan Colbert. Do any of them make it? Looking kind of unlikely, but because to me, I'm guessing, it's going to be Poyer, Holland, May, top 3. Campbell will make the team as your 4th safety, but he's a special teams guy. And then Nick Needham can kind of be someone that makes the roster who could be considered a corner and your 5th safety, who can play both, obviously. And then you have someone like Ethan Bonner, who we've talked about, who can potentially switch over and play safety, be both spots. So secondary overall, I feel pretty good about it as a group. We'll let people get in here. Anyone, and Phil, feel free to ask anything in the chat. I'm always reading the chat, pretty much answer everything that's asked down there, unless it's absolutely insane. I'll show some clips of May, actually. We'll go through May real quick. Let me pull this up. And boom. Okay, so Marcus May, the most recent addition. I made a film breakdown on Marcus May and Calais Campbell if you want to check that out. But starting with May, I think he's going to come in and be that 3rd safety. With this new system, you're going to see some 3 safety sets. I like adding May because he has a lot of experience doing a lot of different things. Most of his experience does come in on the back end, but I do think he's had seasons where he played slot a decent amount. He had seasons where he played down in the box. He's pretty good versus the run, avoiding blocks. Definitely a consistent tackler, which is nice to see, at least on this film. And then playing on the back end, which I think is most important, is giving Holland a little versatility. Because when it comes down to it, I think when you look at the defensive backs, you have to have someone that plays that Hamilton role. And to me, I do think Ramsey is probably better suited for it, but it won't always be like that because sometimes the other team can have a clear number 1 who lines up on the outside, and you're probably going to want Ramsey to shadow. So in those situations where Ramsey's just sticking to the outside, maybe shadowing someone, you can have Holland, be that guy that moves around. And then you have Poyer and May, who are just pretty smart, consistent players on the back end. Maybe not making super flashy plays, but just getting the job done. Experience, being able to put a cap on the back end, which is definitely helpful. Would you grade Poyer and May as starting caliber players? Yeah, I'd probably, for safeties, I'd probably have them on they're not safety 1 players, so they're not high end safeties, but I would probably have them as middle of the pack, maybe low end starter types. Safety position is kind of weird though. I really have to go through and look at every safety group to really make that decision and put exactly where I would rank them. But yeah, I think they're definitely at least low end starters, which isn't a bad thing to have 2 safeties that are low end starters, and you have Holland who's more in that top 10-ish range, which is good. So overall, a pretty solid safety room. It could be better. I love going after the safety position, and I think when you look at the safety position long term, there's a lot of question marks here. This year, I think you're good. Now that you added May, I think you're good this year. But long term, you have to sign Holland. Holland will be a free agent after the season, so that's not a guarantee. I do think he sticks around. But then after that, it's May and Poyer. I don't think May's deal's been disclosed yet, but I'm guessing it's a 1-year deal. He's like 31 years old. Poyer was signed on a cheap 1-year deal. These are old vets that you could possibly re-sign, but you're looking to like potentially replace and upgrade in the future. And then like the rest of the roster, I don't see like really starter types. I think you can potentially have guys who maybe develop into like a third, fourth safety, but not really any starters after Holland for the years to come. I appreciate that JD. Who else can we? So we talk about May. We can talk about, before we get really into the safeties, we can talk about the Dolphins adding Calais Campbell, which I'm a fan of the move. I think the Dolphins have added so many defensive linemen this offseason. It's actually kind of crazy how many D linemen they added. But Campbell comes in, and he's clearly top 3 in your rotation. Because I think you obviously have Sealer, who's your number 1. But then after Sealer, it was kind of like to your Tart, but Tart's definitely your second most talented after Sealer before the Campbell signing. But he has question marks when it comes to like his love for the game, his effort. That's been question marks for him in the past. So hopefully he can answer those questions. And then after that, it was a bunch of guys that I don't mind in rotation, but I don't want to see them playing like significant snaps. So bringing in Campbell, who is 37, I believe, which is quite old, but for him being 37, his film was a lot better than I expected. Like that they brought him in. He can play multiple different spots, which is big. You know, as he can pretty much play all the way across the line. He even play. I think early on we could see him with Phillips and Chubb kind of rehabbing, coming back from injuries. Phillips might play, but even if he's playing, you could still see Campbell playing some big edge snaps where he lines in like that 6 to 9 technique. Because there's reps. If you watch the film breakdown on him, there's reps of him actually doing some pretty good stuff there. And then he can also play from 1 to 5 as well, and still be pretty effective depending on the down. So nice to have that rotation. You have Sealer, Tart, Campbell, and then after that, we'll get in the D tackle room another time, but it really comes down. You usually keep like 5, you potentially 6. It would come down to probably Gallimore, Benito Jones, Deshaun Hand, and Jonathan Harris fighting for a spot, if I had to guess. Because they have a lot of bodies there. They have like so many bodies in the D line room, like a ridiculous amount. So it's a lot of them, and it's not like there's a lot of high-end talent after Sealer either. I've been busy every time I've gone live. I just want to say thanks for all your breakdowns. I can tell you put a ton of work into them. What do you think about the interior line? Appreciate that, Brian. Yeah, I'm going to have a stream on every position group, so I'll go really deep into interior line eventually. But to answer your question, just quickly, I do think the depth isn't the problem with the interior line. I actually think you have like multiple pieces there that are, because to me, most of your players in the interior are depth players like Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg. They're like Eichenberg, I don't want starting, but he's not that bad as a depth guy. I just don't know if they have they need another guy that's like a starter type, in my opinion. Because I think Isaiah Wynn can start for you at left guard, but I don't think he's like an elite player. I think Jack Driscoll currently is a guy who could start at right guard, but to me, he's also kind of like a fringe. He's kind of like a 6-0 lineman type too. So they have a lot of good depth guys at guard. They just don't have a lot of high-end starters. Because I feel good about Brewer at center, but don't really have too much depth behind him. Center depth is kind of a problem right now. So yeah, it is the biggest question mark. I do think after adding a safety and a D tackle, it is the next thing. If they're going to add another position, it would be interior line. I personally would have gone safety, interior line, then D tackle, just because they've added so many D tackles. But adding Campbell, yeah, for sure, like that move. I do agree that it is kind of like the last question mark. They've kind of avoided it, but I've talked about it in the past. They do not value the position as much. They think they can scheme out of it. And then let's see here. Who can we talk about next at safety position? And also talking about Campbell again, I didn't really get to finish, but he is a guy that has a lot of he's a great leader and has a lot of experience within the scheme, which is another big thing. That's definitely helpful for the squad, because they have a lot of new guys rotating within the system. So having Campbell come in and just understanding it right away is very, very helpful. We can talk about Holland next. Holland, definitely your star at the safety spot. Just finding some random clips here on Twitter that I remember, here he is. I think this is a couple years ago, him. But showing some range on the back end, probably when he was having some better seasons. We'll probably see him play multiple different spots within this new system. Holland is one that is like I could see it going in different directions. Just him, potentially playing in that, Kyle Hamilton role, because Kyle Hamilton is a safety, but I also see Ramsey potentially being a pretty good player in that Hamilton role. But I think Holland will see. I think him and Holland will both see snaps. I think it just depends on game. And when they go into 3 safety sets, I do see them kind of being like, oh, let's match Holland around, because Holland when he was at Oregon, he played a ton of like snaps within the slot. Like that's where he was known for playing, like in the slot, moving around, playing down in the box. And then when he came to the NFL, he played more in the back end as like a free safety. And then within, Fangio's system, he's played, more in those split field safety looks, still playing as like the free, but on the back end. So I think you're going to see more versatility out of Holland, which is big, because I think versatility is one of his better traits. Because he's instinctive, he's got good range, which is nice. Here versus Carolina, this is from a few years ago too. I'm just finding some random clips on Twitter. But just good closing speed, range, ball skills. He has really good ball skills, but I feel like he hasn't got a chance to show that often in a while. And I feel like the Ravens system is pretty safety friendly, so I'm hoping to see like another step from Holland this year, because he is your best player back there. I think having veteran help next to him will be good. Having players like Poyer and May, I think, is good for him too. And if he does get to play that Hamilton role, he's definitely going to get to showcase his full skill set. So I'm excited to see where Holland goes. And yeah, and also they have to extend him if they want to keep him around. Pretty good. Yeah, JD, I'm pretty sure he's back to 100%. They were just like sprains, so I think he should be good by now. It's just tough because he was injured towards the end of the season. He had 2 sprained knees, which is not too good, but I'm pretty sure he's back to good. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. Yeah, Weaver's to me, I don't really have too many questions about the offense. I expect the offense to look, a little bit different, but I still know what to expect, with McDaniel and Tua now after seeing them for 2 years. Even though they have the new added pieces, I'm excited to see that. But the defense is going to look completely different. There's still some question marks that I have with how everyone will be used exactly. Like I have my guesses from film watching, but we still don't know. Like how we talked about Ramsey or Holland. Will Ramsey or Holland both play the Hamilton role, or they both see time depending? Do you think we get a player to play that Kyle Hamilton role? Do you think we have a player? Oh, okay. I don't think we get a player for the first part. No, because if they were going to get another player that's not on the roster to play the Kyle Hamilton role, they've already would have done that because it's so important. You're not going to find anyone. Hamilton is such a good player. And yes, I do think they have players on the roster. I think Holland could do some stuff like Hamilton, but I don't think to the same level. That's why I've been talking about Jalen Ramsey playing the Hamilton role, because I think Ramsey is one of the few players in the NFL that actually has that skill set to play on the outside. He'd play more corner than Hamilton did, but he could play in the slot. He could play down in the box as like a dime linebacker. He can go on the back end, because at Florida State, like Ramsey played a ton of safety. So I think utilizing Ramsey's skill set to like its maximum potential, get him around the line of scrimmage, let him make instinctive plays. The next snap, he's shadowing the team's number one, whether he's on the outside or inside. So yeah, I think, to me personally, I think Ramsey should play the Hamilton role if you feel comfortable with Cam Smith then playing on the outside with Ramsey moving around, because then you also have Fuller. You have other corners too that, Kohu being a slot guy. But yeah, I think it should be Ramsey personally. And then Holland maybe getting some snaps in that role. Maybe they kind of split it, What's up, Ryder? I love the Poyer pickup. Yeah, I think the Poyer pickup is... I haven't talked about Poyer yet, but we can definitely we'll get into Poyer right now, because we've talked about Holland and May, because I do like the May pickup. I wanted a third safety. I think a third safety is very important for this defensive scheme. And then adding Poyer, I think the biggest thing so far is what we've heard about Poyer is his ability as a leader, which I like to see. They've definitely talked about him coming in, taking in a leadership role, helping people out. Because I do think Poyer has lost a little bit of a step when you watch his film, which makes sense. He's 33 years old. His film actually was at his best last year when he played down in the box. You can still see that he's instinctive, he's tough, he goes out there, will make tackles, willingness, which is all nice too. Still a smart player. I just don't expect him to be as like super impactful when it comes to like making plays on the ball. Not super rangy to play like free, but he's got like, when the Dolphins will be running, I think, a bunch of like, quarters, cover 6. They're going to, mix up their looks, play like in split field safety looks, which I think is big. So having Poyer and May that can play in split field safety looks, and Holland, who then maybe if you're in 3 safety sets, you could have Holland maybe, go down to the slot and then cover a tight end or something because he has that skill set. So I do like the Poyer pickup for a lot of those reasons. Most intrigued by Jordan Brooks. I feel like we've been seeing solid in some linebacks. Yeah, I've talked about Jordan Brooks a ton. I think if you watch the streams or just my videos on Brooks in general, I think Brooks was the most important defensive pickup this offseason. If you look at the Ravens system, it was so like last year. If you look at the Ravens, Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton were by far the biggest part of that defensive scheme and were the reason it ran. And to me, like, I'm not saying Brooks, like Roquan Smith is one of the best linebackers in the NFL. I'm not saying Jordan Brooks is to that level, but they have very similar skill sets. So I think Brooks is going to thrive within this system. They're going to utilize him to his best. And I think he's so important with helping up front and on the back end versus the run and in coverage. He'll be super important. And then whoever plays the Hamilton role, like Ramsey or Holland, will also be extremely important for this game. Cam Smith needs to get on the field. Yep, I can see Ramsey playing rover. Yeah, they're going to move. Ramsey needs to move around, man. Just leaving him to one side of the field playing corner just is not the best use of his skill set. Teams can easily avoid him. You think Kohu will have a bounce back here? I think if they stick Kohu strictly in the slot, he will automatically have a bounce back year. Like, he'll automatically play a lot better. Because last year when he did play strictly the slot, he did just play better than when he played on the outside. Like, a lot of his bad games, like where he like really ruined his stock, is when he was playing like on the outside for the most part, and that's just not where he belongs. And he was just put into some terrible situations by Fangio. So I think it's a combination of he did have a little bit of a slump. Like he was worse in the slot compared to his rookie year, but he wasn't like terrible when he was playing the slot. So I think bouncing him back to the slot, and I do think Kohu is a better man-to-man corner than a zone corner. So I'm not sure if he'll bounce back like completely like he was his rookie season, because I think he's just a better fit for that Flores style defense. But I do expect him to look better because I think they're going to stick him strictly in the slot. And I don't think he'll see as much playing time this year. Like, he saw a lot of playing time in his first 2 years. I think this year with Fuller, Ramsey, and I'm expecting Cam Smith to get more of a look. That's just how I feel right now. I think they're going to be to the top 3. And then Kohu will be probably like your 4th guy. Maybe I'm just old school, but having a true is going to be, yeah. I believe the correct term is rover, safety / linebacker. Yeah, Ryan, it just depends on your team. Like, different teams call like different players, different positions, like the rover. There's also like the star position, which is like what Saban calls like that nickel safety kind of hybrid that also plays some linebacker snaps. There's a bunch of different names that you can use. It just depends on the team, what they call it. Need a 6'5" wide receiver we could pick up during the midseason trade deadline. Honestly, I'm thinking the 6'5", the tall receiver the Dolphins are going to use this year is Jody Fortson, who's a tight end. But yeah, I do think, I just don't know which receiver they would get. But you never know how that thing opens up. Yeah, Cody's not a Badgers guy. I'm sure we agree with everything you're saying. Trade Nick, don't need him. That's funny. I like the play on words there. Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to keep Needham around because we're talking about the safeties. I'm guessing Needham sticks around on the roster because they're kind of using him in multiple different roles. The only reason, I just don't think they would get it. I just don't think they would get anything in a trade for him. I think if they got rid of Needham, it would just be cutting. I do think he's kind of on the edge of the roster though. Like, I could see it going either way because to me, the safety room is Holland, Poyer, May, top 3. And then I actually would give Elijah Campbell the slight edge because he's a very good special teams player as the 4th safety. And then it's like, do they keep a 5th safety, and is that Needham? Because they could keep him as a safety / nickel, because Needham's biggest strength right now for him making this roster is his ability his versatility to play multiple spots. So, and we can talk about Needham. Yeah, it's the versatility. He can play nickel, safety. He's been training as a safety this offseason. He's also now 2 years removed from the injury. Last year, he came back like mid-season after the injury. Needham had the Achilles, right? Was it Achilles or ACL for Needham? I can't remember. I know him and Brandon Jones both got injured like around the same time. One of them tore ACL, one of them tore Achilles. So last year, he wasn't like super healthy, which I think hurt him. But we'll see if he sees playing time this year in this new system. Versatility is very important in this Weaver system, so that could help him stick around, and we'll see how it ends up playing out. If Dolphins defense is top 10, I believe we'll see our playoff win. Definitely a high possibility. I mean, it's just, I think it also kind of depends towards the end of the season how your teams are playing. Because like the Dolphins offense was still like, I think statistically the best offense in the NFL by the end of the season, but they weren't playing like it. And then the Dolphins defense was probably like, it was pretty injured, but it was playing pretty good compared to how it was statistically. So by the end of the season, they just both have to be playing like top 10 units. And then, yeah, I definitely agree. Def on the edge. Yeah, he's like right on the edge. He has, I would say he's pretty 50-50 Needham. If I just had to guess. Because also like, I'll talk about a little bit about Ethan Bonner, because Ethan Bonner is Ethan Bonner, I think, is someone that could potentially play safety for this team. He's considered a corner right now, so I'll really get into him in the corner room. But I do think he has a skill set. If you go watch my like breakdown on him, he definitely has some of the skill sets to play safety. I think with his instincts, and sometimes like, I think the biggest problem that gets him into trouble as a corner is he takes some false steps, which he can get more away with at safety. So I think that could help him out. And he's also pretty good at filling versus the run, willing to get down, get involved in the box, which would be interesting. But yeah. Kohu took his spot. Talking about Needham. Yeah, Kohu did take that like nickel spot. That's why I think they moved. Like Needham has been like mostly working at safety from my understanding at OTAs. So I think that's why Needham's with the safety group, because Needham or Kohu did kind of take that nickel spot from Needham when he got hurt. Plus you have a lot of guys in the corner room now. Does Poyer have anything left to take? Yeah, Poyer has stuff left in the tank. I think he's lost a step, but he definitely still has some left in the tank, I would say. I'm excited about Fortson. Did some reach run when we signed him, and he dealt with a few bad hands, but looked good when he was healthy. Yeah, I agree. I think Fortson has a pretty good chance of making the roster, especially with how he's performed in OTAs. One thing, usually when those types of players leave their former teams, fan bases usually don't have too many positives to say, but Chiefs fans were like actually very disappointed to lose Fortson. Like they love Fortson. I think he just had an injury last year, but when he was used in those 13 personnel sets in Kansas City, he had some pretty solid success. Even when he wasn't getting the ball, having a guy at his size and speed at the tight end position that way he's able to like clear out space is pretty valuable. So yeah, I've talked about Fortson a lot. I actually give him the edge over Julian Hill right now personally, but I think it just comes down to preseason. He will be if he can block. Well, he's not going to be like an inline blocker. That's why it's tough to say whether him or Julian Hill will make the roster, or both, I guess, technically. It's because they're very different skill sets. Like, Fortson is like a red zone threat, can stretch the field down the seam, can go up and win some jump balls. He can block like on the perimeter, like, but he's more of like, he can play as like an X. Like, he can block corners and safeties. But Hill is like a much better inline blocker than him. So there's very different players. That's why it's tough to say right now until we see it play out. What's up, Cap for Live? How you doing? Who have we not talked about safety wise yet? We got Poyer, Holland. We got May. Just talked a little bit about Needham. I guess we talk about Elijah Campbell because he's high up on this roster. I'm looking at the depth chart. He's in that second string. He played a little bit of snaps last year. I do think Campbell in his limited snaps has actually had some interesting play. Like, he hasn't been terrible. Like last year, I know when he played one game, he actually played pretty decently. So as a depth guy, I don't think he's that bad. He's not someone you want starting full time. I think Campbell's best chance of making the roster right now is because he is a very good special teams player. He had a very good year last year as a special teams guy. So I think that kind of gives him the edge over the other safeties currently that are kind of, on that fringe roster spot. Also Campbell, I remember it wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago he saw playing time. And he played as a dime linebacker, but he was spying Josh Allen. It was in the playoff game against the Bills. He was spying Josh Allen, and he was like the only one that they put on him to spy, because Allen was just cooking all our linebackers when we'd spy him. But when they put Campbell as a spy, he actually had a pretty good success, which kind of makes sense. Usually those special teams guys play fast or good angles, physical tacklers. Yeah. Yeah, Hill's just so good at blocking, might be tough. Yeah, the tight end room, if you watch my last stream where I did the film, like I did the breakdown on the position, I talked a lot about the tight end room, and I talked about how, Johnny Smith, Durham Smythe being your 1 and 2. And then usually teams keep 3 tight ends. There is a world where teams keep 4, so I guess they all 4 could make it. But me just looking at the roster and trying to think of who makes it, I actually think they keep 3. And with how Fortson looks and Julian Hill's skill set, I put it right now. Right now, I have Fortson at like 60% making it and Julian Hill at 40%. So I give Fortson the edge just because of how good he's looked in OTAs. But training camp and preseason can completely change that stuff. I know they really like Julian Hill. He has that physical skill set. He's probably the best blocking tight end on the team. It's just Fortson brings such a unique skill set the Dolphins don't even have in the receiving room with his size, ability in the red zone. And he also has the ability, like if you watch him like motion around, it's very intriguing. Keep forgetting we got Jonnu Smith as well. Yeah, Jonnu is going to eat. I agree, Brian. I've talked a lot about Jonnu. He's like the perfect fit for the scheme. He's just perfect for what the Dolphins missed last year. Like Jonnu Smith is not like a high end. He's not an elite tight end in this league, but he's an elite player with the ball in his hands, like at the tight end position. And having an intermediate threat is something the Dolphins desperately missed last year. A guy that could also break tackles along with the speed, because Dolphins have a lot of guys who can make people miss. But they don't have guys who can always make you miss, but then also break tackles, run through people, get physical over the middle. So Jonnu's going to get a lot of those works. Like, I think last year when Durham would get like the ball underneath, he'd be open and then he'd run forward, fall forward for a few yards. Jonnu actually has the opportunity to take those and then turn those even to more longer and longer gains. So it's pretty nice. Guys, we are stacked to pretty much every position. Bless. Yeah, this is probably the best roster. This year's roster and last year's roster are 2 of the best rosters the Dolphins have had in my lifetime that I can remember, like all around. Like I know people would point out, we talked about the interior line probably being the weakest spot, but like every team has a position like that, and every team usually has more positions like they're not super strong at. So we're actually in a pretty good spot if it's just like that. If it's just interior line you're looking weak at, and it's like that's the position McDaniel's very good at schematically helping. Yeah, they can't do 4 tight ends and 7 wide receivers. Yeah, I don't even think they're going to do 7. I think they're going to do 6 receivers and 3 tight ends. And then they might keep an extra body at like O-line. That would be my guess, but we'll see. Also, I think if they keep Fortson as that tight end, they also could say they keep 4 tight ends, though, they could see Fortson as like a 4th tight end, but also your 7th receiver. Like he could fill both spots, if you get what I'm saying. Because Fortson played some receiver for Kansas City. He's a former receiver. He plays mostly a receiver-like skill set, so... if he balls out in the preseason, though, I don't see a world where he doesn't make the team. Any chance we trade Smythe to cut some salary? I would not be against it, but I personally would be surprised if that happens. I think they really like Durham. I think he's just a reliable guy that they have that can go and do play multiple of the different tight end spots out there for them. So I would be surprised if they did it, but I wouldn't be mad about it. Because I think Durham's a good number 2, and he's been forced to play as like the Dolphins' number 1 tight end for years now. But I wouldn't be against it, as you said, save some salary. I don't know how much it would save personally, just off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it, but I think if you got rid of Smythe, you'd get better receiving out of Fortson, and then you'd get better blocking out of Hill, so they could easily fill in that spot for him. I saw a create mismatch. I saw a couple of events where Cater and Deshaun Elliott weren't on the same page. Oh yeah, it wasn't just them, but I know what you're talking about. Specifically, I have plays in my head from the Titans game and the Cowboys game, like in my head, like the long CeeDee Lamb plays, the long DeAndre Hopkins plays where they had miscommunications. I think it was both of them, to be honest, that were at fault at different times. But yeah, they definitely had their problems where they weren't on the same page. I also think it had to do with some of the Fangio stuff. It definitely seemed a part of it back there, but hopefully all that gets fixed. That was a huge problem for the whole defense last year. I think it was a problem for pretty much everyone in the secondary at some point, and it was even a problem for some of the linebackers. Like David Long and Jerome Baker had some problems with passing off the underneath crossers, mesh concepts. So communication is key. That's why adding guys like Poyer, May, like seasoned vets will definitely be helpful. And it's something Jordan Brooks at linebacker is very good at, is communication and passing off those routes. So hopefully Long, who's very good at stopping the run, can be a little bit better in coverage. Can we please get to a sign already? All this conversation is great. I just like to put, yeah, I'm ready for them to get signed too. I'm guessing it just has to do with like the specifics, specifically when it comes to injuries and stuff, like how it's all worded with like guarantees and stuff like that. I'm guessing like, the market, as Tua said, the market is the market. I'm guessing the Dolphins are ready to pay him like around the market, but it has to come down to like the specifics within the contract. Yeah. Well, last year was his first year back from Achilles, and he didn't play that much, so it is tough to say how much Needham still has left, But I'm guessing if he makes the roster, he plays mostly safe. He'll be like a safety depth guy. Do you see Ezukanma making the 53-man roster? Yeah, I think Ezukanma makes it. It is tough. There is 8 receivers, and I think they keep 6. The reason I think Ezukanma makes it is he still is a third-year, 4th-round pick, so I think draft capital definitely helps him. I think it depends how healthy. If he's healthy, I think he makes it. He has a different skill set than the rest of the Dolphins receivers. Like with his physicality, he has a different size to him. And Ezukanma is known for looking good in the preseason, and looking good in the preseason does give you a good chance of making the roster. So my guess right now is if he's healthy, yes, I do think he makes the roster. But they have a lot of bodies there with Malik, Taj, Barrios, Craycraft. That's another interesting position to really get into. He looked slower. Oh, you're talking about, yeah, Needham. Just throwing this out there, 30 people in the chat and 13 likes. Come on, guys. Yeah, if you want to like it. Like the stream. Appreciate it. I don't think Tua and Holland's contract are dealt with until midseason or after season. I think we see one of them get dealt with in the offseason here. Just from what I've seen, like from people who like are pretty on the nose, like they think it will get done around like either right before training camp or during training camp, the 201. Holland, I'm not sure. And we'll see about Phillips too. I wonder if they do Phillips now while he's injured to maybe potentially get him for less, but who knows? Yeah, they clearly had a specific role for Ezukanma last year before he got hurt. Plus, I feel like everyone's saying like Ezukanma's always hurt. He only really had that one injury last year. His first year he didn't play because of he was just a rookie, and sometimes 4th-round rookies don't really play that much. So to me, he kind of got unlucky that when he was finally getting playing time, he got hurt. So we'll see. I do think he deserves another year. Usually, 3rd year is where you get that chance. I prefer Ethan Bonner over Needham as that versatile DB. I agree, David. David, I agree. Robbie Miller also agrees. What would a Holland contract look like? Probably around the highest in the league, whatever that is. Didn't Winfield just get paid ridiculous amounts? I don't know. It depends on what it is. Personally, I've said this. I said I would pay Waddle first, which they already did. I said I would pay Tua first before Holland. And I've also said I would pay Phillips before I would pay Holland. Just because I think Phillips last year before he got injured, I thought was the best defensive player on this roster, personally. And I think he plays a more valuable position. Poyer been All-Pro numerous times. That is true. He's not an All-Pro player anymore, but he definitely he's still solid. He's just not the player he quite used to be, which is fine. You're right. Phil's contract is coming up so well. Poor kid. Hope he's getting healthy. So much potential. Yeah. Are there any free agent corners worth breaking in? I think I looked at I looked at the list a while ago. I don't think the corner one was. I'm pretty sure the best rated corner on the corners free agent list was Xavier Howard, which personally, no thanks. I don't think they're gonna bring in a corner. I think they're Ramsey and Fuller very comfortable with, and I think they're like, hey, it's Cam Smith's time. Like, you got to play. And if Cam Smith isn't ready, they'll just have Ramsey and Fuller play on the outside, and they'll put Kohu in the slot. Just curious, what was the last player the Dolphins franchise tagged? Didn't they tag Wilkins? Or am I mistaken? They've tagged a few guys over the years. Who was the most recent though? I'm pretty sure they tagged Wilkins, right? Oh no, they last used the franchise tag on Gesicki in 2022. Yeah, they they didn't. I know that. Yeah, they didn't use one last year. It was Gesicki. They were thinking about using it on Wilkins. I'm more concerned about Ko. Yeah, I mean, I think Ko is going to be the fourth corner this year. Personally, I think it's going to be Cam. Cam's going to be the third guy. That's just my guess. You also got to put into effect like draft capital really does matter, like to people getting chances. Sutton from Denver 6'5". Yeah, Cortland. Personally, I don't really care to. I mean, I wouldn't mind adding a guy with size, but I don't think it's like a necessity. I think it just depends skill set wise. Gesicki, right? Yeah. It was. I forgot we franchise tagged Gesicki. The only problem with Phillips is we can't be 100% early. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not expecting Phillips to look the same this year, like 100%, but I do think after 2 years, he should be fine. Yeah, hopefully he is another Cam Wake. I do think Phillips is like a freak of nature athlete, so I have pretty high hopes he'll get back to form. I just don't think we should put too like high of expectations right away because that first year is always tough. That's why Dolphins added a lot of bodies in the edge room. Yeah, I also think the thing with a safety contract is it's tough though because the Dolphins really won't have any safeties on the roster next year if Holland leaves. So I do think adding like safety is a very important position. I think next draft for the Dolphins. It's something I've already been looking into. Whether Holland stays or not, I think it's important to look at. Plus, it's just like position impact wise, I don't think it's the smartest like strategy wise to go after that. Okay, but going through the rest of the safeties, guys who probably won't make the roster or who are on like the edge we have the rookies. We have Mark Perry, Patrick McMorris, and Jordan Colbert. We'll start with McMorris because that's who the Dolphins drafted out of Cal. I did a breakdown on him. I can show some of the clips here. We got, here he is in the nickel. I think the thing with McMorris is I wasn't like super, I mean, he was a 6th round pick, but when I watched the film, I wasn't like super excited. He was like a pretty like smart player, like instinctive, which I think is important. Like he clearly understood his job, his responsibility. And he has some good versatility. Like he can play on the back end. I think specifically in split field looks, like I don't think he's played middle of the field closed because I don't think he has the range for that. But I do think like he understands leverage. I think, he gets down versus the run. He plays pretty consistent, like with his feet and stuff. He takes away eyes of the corner, or he understands how to read the eyes of the corner, or the quarterback. Can't speak. He takes good angles, pretty good tackler out in space. Can play down in the slot and do some of that stuff. It's just I don't think he's like super athletic, which I think hurts him as like potential wise to ever like be like a great safety. So to me, I'm thinking with McMorris personally, I think like he's a guy you probably try to keep on the practice squad. And then like Perry, we'll get into Perry because I think Perry, they're actually quite different because Perry is like a little bit, Perry's at his best in man coverage, like in the slot. Like he actually his film at TCU, he looks good in man coverage. Zone wise, he does not have great instincts. Like I think that's why him and McMorris are very different. Because Perry's a very good athlete, great speed. I think he has like 4.3 speed that you can see on the film. Plays some good physicality, but Perry's like the athlete who needs better instincts. McMorris is the instinctive type, but needs better athleticism. So if one of them makes a roster, I would imagine it because they stepped up on special teams, which I think that would give Perry a better chance because I think Perry's skill set fits better for special teams. And then we have Jordan Colbert, Rhode Island safety. Actually has some pretty fun film, pretty long, has some, fun range, makes some good ball skill type plays. I don't really expect him to make a roster, but all three of these guys I think have a chance to stick around on the practice squad. And then maybe McMorris and Perry like if they really stand out in training camp and preseason, could make the roster. Because like I would say Campbell's not like a lock, and they could take Campbell's spot, but then they'd have to beat him out special teams wise, which would be a tough ask, I think. Okay. What did you guys see? Okay. Who would you like to see as the starting guards? Isaiah Wynn at left guard and Jack Driscoll at right guard. Oh, I'm dropping frames. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Hold on. Hopefully I'm not sounding horrible. Let me know how it sounds, because it says I'm dropping frames hard. Interesting. But yeah, Isaiah Wynn and Jack Driscoll as the starting guards. For, in my opinion, that's who I think should start. I think they have the best film. I think they're the best fit schematically at the guard position the Dolphins have, and they're both good in pass protection. Both need to be better in as run blockers. With add of Calais Campbell, I think Brandon Peely is cut. Honestly, I think Brandon Peely would have got cut even without adding Calais Campbell. I think they added so many bodies. I think it's a tough, like they have so many bodies there. Like, and I don't love players like Gallimore or Benito Jones or Deshaun Hand or Jonathan Harris, but they all over the last couple seasons have like significant snaps. They have a lot of playing time. I'm not saying Peely doesn't have a chance, but yeah, I do think Peely is more of a practice squad candidate. Needham was good for us under Poyer. I think he can bounce back to form in over a year. If Cam Smith can beat out Kohu and Needham, we have solid depth, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm not too worried about the depth of the DB position. I actually think they have a decent amount of bodies there. I just think they need to find, they just need Cam Smith to step up and be that starter, which will be helpful. And then safety wise, you have guys that can play safety like Needham. I think Bonner, as we talked about, can do both. I hope Bonner makes the squad. I also think he's kind of on that edge of the roster right now too. But I would, if they had to choose between some of those guys. We have like Siren Neal, who can play nickel. He's from Buffalo, but he's more of a special teams guy, and he probably makes the roster for special teams. But if they have a few DBs they're considering on the bubble of the roster, I would rather keep Bonner probably over a few of those guys. Video attach hobby at times, but audio is fine. Okay, it looks like it says it's back to normal, so that's good. I'm excited to see if Ethan Bonner ends up becoming something. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Bonner, man, he actually has some good film from last year. Like in his limited playing time in that Chiefs game, he only played a handful of snaps, but he looked like one of the better defenders in that game. He made multiple impact plays in just a handful of snaps. And then in his other handful of snaps where he played, he was playing over Cam Smith, looked pretty solid. And I went back and watched his college film recently. If you guys haven't seen that breakdown, I did his an old college film breakdown on him. I think he clearly looked I was oh, this guy looked like a draftable player. He looked better than the Dolphins UDFAs this year. So yeah, I have pretty for him being a UDFA, I have pretty high hopes for him being a UDFA that he'll be something. I'm not saying he'll be a high end starter, but I have hopes that he'll turn into a decent depth option, I'll say. Do you think our inside? I think I wouldn't be concerned if they stay healthy. I think if the O-line stays healthy, the Dolphins will be pretty fine offensively. But as you mentioned, injuries did hurt them. I actually think it hurt more of their passing game than their running game, because I actually think the Dolphins' backup guards were better run blockers than pass blockers. And the reason I still think they were able to be successful throwing the ball is because of how they set up their offense. But I also think that hurt the high-end capability of the offense, because they had to do things very quickly. I think that's the reason, Tua at the start of the season was getting to his second, third read a lot, but towards the end of the season, he wasn't. And it wasn't because he couldn't process, but I think it was because he was I got to get the ball out so fast. I kind of have to force something, which, I think was a McDaniel problem, a Tua problem, and an O-line problem overall. So that can definitely be something to talk about. Is one of the reasons you want Driscoll at right guard so we can have Eichenberg as backup center? I mean, that's another reason. I just think Driscoll's better than Eichenberg, so that's like the main reason. But yeah, I think having Eichenberg as center is definitely helpful. I think here's the thing with Eichenberg and Jones is they're not great. Like I like Robert Jones as a backup guard too. I want to make that clear. But Jones and Eichenberg aren't the greatest scheme fits for what McDaniel does. Like you need like high end athletes, and Isaiah Wynn and Jack Driscoll are like high end athletes. Like they both have experience playing tackle. They're converts to guard, and they're better at guard than tackle. But there's a reason they, I think, would excel better in this system. And having Eichenberg and Jones as backups would just make me feel better about them on the roster, honestly. Oh, we made the corresponding cut with Campbell signing? No, I saw they cut Nixon when they signed May, but I don't think I've seen them. I don't think it's made. Has it been made official by the Dolphins exactly? So. But yeah. Yeah, I would keep Bonner. If it came down to like Bonner versus Needham for the roster, yeah, I would keep Bonner as well. Because I think they both have some like corner safety versatility, and while you maybe feel a little more comfortable with Needham, I just think Bonner has a much higher ceiling, and I would think Bonner showed me enough last year. I'd lean to go Ethan, especially at this point. But yeah, that's all the safeties, right? No other safeties listed on here. I mean, there's probably guys that could play both corner and safety, but yeah. Any other questions? We can talk about anything now. Like I got into the safeties. We talked about other random topics here and there. I'll probably do. I don't know which room I'll do next. Probably the receiver or D line. Maybe I'll just do D line because the Dolphins just signed Campbell, so I'll do that in the next stream. But yeah. I'm just watching. Let me see. Do I have any clips? I went through all the clips that I wanted to show. Let me cut that off. Boom, boom. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can do that stuff, or we can just end it here. We can chill. What do you guys think of how do you feel about the May signing? Because I talked about the May Marcus May right at the beginning, so I don't know if everyone was here for that, but if Chop dominates, do we move on from Chubb? I would, personally. I like Chubb. I think he's done a good job. But I think, just thinking of the future, thinking of the cap, I think Chubb's someone you could potentially save money on in the future. And I think when you look at the room, I think you're thinking, I'd rather keep Phillips. You want to sign Phillips to an extension? I'd rather get Phillips to an extension than Chubb. If Chop steps up big time and you feel good about him, then you have your two starters, future starters. You could always re-sign Shaq Barrett to another 1-year deal if you want to have him as your third. And then you also drafted Mo Kamara, who I feel like he's an older rookie. He's a guy that you're probably going to try to get, even though he's a 5th rounder, probably, I think, has a skill set where he's kind of pro ready. So you're kind of hoping Kamara, you kind of want Chop to take over the Chubb role in the future, his position, not his exact role. And then you want Kamara to kind of take the Shaq Barrett role, and Shaq Barrett's kind of taking the Van Ginkel role, so that's who your new 3 are, and then you always, add to it overall, because edge is a position you want a lot of bodies at. But yeah, I do think Chubb is one player on the roster that probably gets moved on from out of the higher end, pretty quickly, if I had to guess. Yeah, you guys both mentioned Kamara, get some good snaps. He's a beast. Yeah, I agree. I think that's what you're hoping for. Chop becomes your takes over that second edge spot, and then Kamara can take over the third edge spot in second year. This year, they'll both see playing time, but they're not going to be your top guys this year. But if they show you enough, then you can feel comfortable with them. I think May could start over Poyer in 2 safety lineups. I actually agree, Robbie. I wouldn't be surprised if May sees some snaps over Poyer at time, because I actually think May kind of looked better on the back end last year than Poyer did. May does have some injury stuff. Poyer does too, so I think injuries will play into it. I actually thought Poyer looked really solid in the box last year in a lot of his snaps, so I think they'll both see playing time though, regardless. Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of rotation, not just we'll see a lot of rotation on the D line specifically, like D tackle and edge. I think you'll see a pretty big rotation wise. Like you'll see everyone play up in the front. Linebacker, you'll probably see Brooks, Long, and then I think like Anthony Walker rotating in from time to time, depending on the situation. And I think even in the secondary, we could see May and Poyer both like maybe rotating in and out, kind of keeping the other one fresh, while Holland plays like full time. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But yeah, I feel much better about the safety group now. I was talking about it pre-draft. I was talking about it post-draft. That I think safety was a bigger need than some people thought. And then especially pre-draft because I wanted us to draft a safety. And then post-draft, I was like, yeah, Dolphins need to add a safety. Even though they had Poyer on a 1-year deal, you got to think even to the future. Like you didn't have much at the future of this position. So yeah, adding May at least on a 1-year deal helps for this year. But safety is still something the Dolphins have to address after this season because Holland needs an extension. Poyer and May are, kind of 1-year veteran stopgaps. They could potentially re-sign for another year, but that's not a guarantee either, and you don't really have too much after that. Love stream, keep up the good work. Appreciate you, Byron. Can you give your opinion on Weaver and what our defense will look like? Yeah, I'm very excited to see what the Weaver defense looks like. I really like Baltimore's scheme and how they utilize stuff. Kind of what I'm expecting, because Weaver hasn't been a defense. He was defensive coordinator for 1 season, but I don't think his defense is actually going to look like what it was when he was a defensive coordinator for Houston years ago, because he was calling like the head coach's defense. I think it will look more like Baltimore's when he was under McDonald and Wink Martindale. So I'm expecting to see versatility is very, very important. You're going to see a lot of pre-snap movement. Like, the Dolphins do a lot of pre-snap movement on offense. You're going to see a lot of pre-snap movement on defense. It's not like the calls are crazy. It's just they like to disguise a lot of stuff. So that's very important. Disguising. So having guys who can be versatile, align in multiple different spots, but then rotate post-snap. That's why guys like Ramsey, Holland will be key. That's why guys like Jordan Brooks will be key. Someone who, like Brooks, can show blitz pre-snap, but then drop and carry someone deep. That's why having a linebacker like him is so important. Up front, this is why you've seen the Dolphins maybe not put too much. Like you've seen them add a lot of bodies at D tackle, but you haven't seen them add like a lot of like high-end players to replace Wilkins. You've seen them add like depth to replace Wilkins. In Baltimore, they kind of did the same thing. They didn't like have too many high-end players. They had Madubuike, who will be like what Sealer is, and then they use a heavy rotation on the defensive line front. They'll move people around, like edge, D linemen will both play multiple spots across the front, and they'll use a lot of twist stunts to create a lot of pressure. There won't be a ton of blitzing either. Baltimore wasn't super high in blitz percentage, but what they did blitz, they got home. They got a lot of sacks. So I'm expecting a lot of like sacks that are created schematically. Like they'll be simulated pressures, which is key. So versatility, pre-snap movement, I think is like the biggest thing, with a lot of twists and stunts up front to create, that simulated pressure, which is big. But yeah. What's up, Grant? How you doing? But yeah, unless you guys have any more questions, talked a lot about Weaver there, I think. Unless you have any more specifics, maybe about like players, we'll probably end here in a sec. But yeah, just let me know. My frames look like they're back up. Okay, we're good. Frames dropped for a little bit. Hopefully, it wasn't too bad for you guys. Is Chanu tight end a good blocker? No, I would say Janu is. He's not the worst blocker tight end in the league, but yeah, he's below Smythe, I would say. But like he's willing to get in there and block. It's just don't expect anything like crazy there. But Jonnu will definitely be like your leading receiver at tight end. Specifically getting him the ball in his hands, because that guy, if there's one thing Jonnu Smith is lead at, it's his yards after catch as a tight end. Which is what the Dolphins, I think, have desperately needed now for 2 years. In McDaniel's system, it's very valuable. Now what have we got? 54 minutes in. About to be 55. Pretty solid. We'll probably do either D tackle stream next, just go through the D tackle room, like really get into it. I'll get clips and everything. Either D tackle or receiver, I think want to do next because I think those battles are interesting because the receivers, there's like 8 people that I think makes for 6 spots. And then the D tackle room after your top 3, I think it could be anyone's guess who makes like your 5 or 6 that make it, you know. So yeah. Are you a Volunteers fan? I am. Okay. I've only lived in Tennessee for a couple years now, so I'm not like a Volunteers fan, but I have a job. I work for Sports Info Solutions, and I actually go to the game and like get stats. So I go to every Volunteers home game. So I actually have been there. I actually have a good feel for them as a team, but I'm not technically like a fan. I would say I root for them when they're not playing. Like, I don't really have a college team to be honest, but yeah, I do. I think they'll be better this year. I thought last year Joe Milton was one of the worst college quarterbacks I've ever watched. I think that Nico kid will be much better. And they also have a lot of talent. Like I know James Pierce off the edge is like considered one of the best draft prospects for next year's draft. So it'll be exciting. I like Squirrel White at receiver for them. So I think they'll look better. I also think offensively, their scheme is just weird to me, man. It's not super translatable to the NFL, which is probably my biggest problem with it, but because I like to watch a lot of draft prospects. And God, Milton was tough to watch last season. But yeah, okay. I think we're good. So thank you guys for watching. Do another stream soon. Also my next film breakdown will be I think my next film breakdown is going to be on Achan, but it will be only his receiving clips because I want to go through his receiving because I think that's where Achan takes the next step next season as a receiver. So that will be my next film breakdown in the next like day or two. So yeah. Thank you.